Hello, I'm City Councilmember Paul Krekorian. Welcome to your Los Angeles City Hall. This is perhaps the most iconic building in our city, and it's the symbol of Los Angeles, known to people throughout the world. So I thought I'd take a few minutes to show you around the building, tell you a little bit about its history, and maybe let you see a few things that the public doesn't normally get to see. So why don't we have a look? Throughout this building, you'll see artistic details that represent every era of the rich multicultural history of the city of Los Angeles. The painted tiles that line the dome of the rotunda are a stylized homage to the indigenous Tongva, Chumash, and Tataviam people. And downtown Los Angeles is built at the spot that was previously the village of Yangna. The first Spanish explorers came to Los Angeles in 1542, just 50 years after Columbus's arrival in the New World. The Puerto La Expedition came through Los Angeles in 1769, and just a few years later, Father Junipero Serra founded the mission at San Gabriel. In 1781, 10 years after the mission was founded, 44 intrepid pioneers, known as the Pobladores, came to Los Angeles to create a new pueblo. And they founded this new pueblo in 1781 under the leadership of Governor Felipe de Neve. Those 44 pobladores who started Los Angeles were the first pioneers to create what would become one of the great cities of the world and the second largest city in America. In just 70 years following the founding of Los Angeles, this land went from being part of a colony of Spain to becoming part of the new Republic of Mexico, and then with the Treaty of Cuenca and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo to becoming part of the United States of America. And Los Angeles became an American city. From the beginning of the American era and throughout most of the 19th century, Los Angeles grew, but it was still kind of a backwater town. And when you think of the other towns of the Old West, rough and tumble, kind of violent places, well, that was Los Angeles. In the 1880s, the local business community here formed the Chamber of Commerce, and they really made a concerted effort to try to get people to come to Los Angeles from other parts of the United States, touting great weather, great soil, a great place to start a new life. In 1900, the population of Los Angeles was only 100,000, but it was about to enter its period of most rapid growth. At the beginning of the 20th century, the movie industry, which was just starting out, found its home in Los Angeles. The aviation industry, also just starting out, found its most important home here in Los Angeles. And the discovery of a massive oil field made Los Angeles a leading supplier of petroleum to the world. So the population of Los Angeles grew rapidly from 100,000 in 1900 to 1 million by 1930. By the 1920s, Los Angeles was experiencing not only amazing rapid population growth, but also tremendous economic success. And it was important to the leaders of Los Angeles to make a statement to the rest of the country that Los Angeles had arrived as one of the most important cities in America. The plans for Los Angeles City Hall were intended to do exactly that. At the time that Los Angeles City Hall was being planned by architect John Parkinson, no building in the city could be taller than 150 feet. Los Angeles City Hall was intended to be 454 feet tall. So it took a special vote of the people to approve City Hall being built despite the height limitations. The new City Hall broke ground in 1926. The cornerstone of the building was laid in 1927, and this building was completed in 1928. And as we walk around the building, I'm going to point out examples to you of ways in which the architects of the building intended to send the message that Los Angeles was an important part of the national stage and should be seen as being just as significant a city as any East Coast city. So this is the cornerstone of Los Angeles City Hall. This stone was laid by Mayor George Cryer in 1927. And inside of this stone, there is a copy of the city directory of 1927, a list of the city's employees in 1927, and the city's budget for 1927. So as budget chair, I'd love to get a look at it and see what they spent then and compare it to what we spend now. The concrete that was used for the foundation of City Hall includes sand from every one of California's counties and water from each of California's 21 missions. And of course, the point of that was to demonstrate that Los Angeles was important to every place in California and also as a tribute to the mission history of California as well. These great bronze doors were the original main entrance to City Hall. This is used as an employee entrance now, but this was the main entrance. And these doors were crafted by an artisan named Henry Lyon, an Armenian immigrant to Los Angeles, and they portray many of the most important moments in the early history of Los Angeles, including the original naming of the site, the creation of the city by the pobladores, the first public school, the beginning of the American occupation and era, the creation of the Los Angeles Aqueduct, which allowed for dramatic growth in the city, as well as the building of the breakwater at Los Angeles Harbor, which allowed Los Angeles to trade with the rest of the world. Throughout City Hall, we see some of the most incredible examples of the artisanship of the time. You see it in the incredible tile work, you see it in the hand-painted ceilings, and you see it in the inlaid marble on the floors. Every place in this building was contributed to by incredible, talented artisans. We're here in the main elevator lobby of City Hall, and the ceiling here portrays some of the most important industries of Los Angeles in the 1920s. So they're all in kind of a Greek classical motif. We see the arts and culture, we see construction, we see agriculture, we see a representation of aviation, and my favorite is here where we see the movie industry represented with ancient Greeks shooting a film. This is our city flag, and in the center of the flag is the Great Seal of Los Angeles. Now, the seal represents a lot of the history of our city. It shows representations of the agricultural history with olives, grapes, and oranges. It has a dotted ring around the circle. What it is it's a representation of a rosary, which is a recognition of the original mission history of Los Angeles. And then here in the shield are the 4 sovereigns that have ruled over Los Angeles, starting, of course, with the Kingdom of Spain, the independent Republic of Mexico, and here, of course, that's our state flag, but it's also a representation that for a short time, California had declared itself an independent republic as well for a very short period of time. And then, of course, the United States. This flag in particular is especially important, not just because it's a flag of Los Angeles, but this actual flag has flown in space. This flag was taken aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1984 by Los Angeles native Sally Ride, first American woman to ever fly in space. And she brought this flag back to us from space to be able to present here in City Hall. Now, Los Angeles has over 20 sister cities and continents throughout the world. And many of those sister cities have engagement with the city, exchanges with the city, and have presented a number of gifts to the city. This magnificent model here is a Korean turtle ship that was presented to Los Angeles from the city of Busan, South Korea, one of our sister cities. Nagoya, Japan is one of our oldest sister cities, and on the 30th anniversary of the sister city relationship with Nagoya, the city presented Los Angeles with these incredible models of Buddhist shrines that are traditional to Nagoya, the Kasuisha Shrine. These are just magnificent examples of the kinds of workmanship that go into those shrines that are carried throughout Nagoya during the festival. As well as this clock, which I've always thought looks more like a Bavarian clock, but it was a gift from Nagoya, Japan. We're here in the rotunda of City Hall, and there's a lot of really good examples here of the message that the architects were trying to send about the gravitas of Los Angeles. On this magnificent floor, there are over 4,000 pieces of inlaid marble in this floor. The massive columns that go around the rotunda were quarried in France, Belgium, Greece, and Italy, and imported here to Los Angeles. Here in the center is a representation of a Spanish caravel. And the caravels were small trading ships that were routinely seen up and down the coast of California in the 1500s and 1600s. This beautiful chandelier in the rotunda was a handcrafted work of art. It was hung here when City Hall was first built, but it only stayed there for 5 years because in 1933, the Long Beach earthquake struck. Everyone in City Hall was terrified after that that chandelier might fall. So it was taken down, put in storage, and it wasn't located for decades later. After a number of earthquakes that hit Los Angeles in the 1980s and 1990s, there was a real concern about the seismic safety of Los Angeles City Hall. And there was genuine discussion about tearing down this magnificent building and starting from scratch. But fortunately, many people thought that that was a horrendous idea and rose up to help. And Project Restore was created in order to save City Hall and refurbish it and make sure that it was restored to its great original glory. And we're so grateful to everyone at Project Restore and all the people who made that restoration possible. In fact, not only was the beauty of City Hall fully restored, but the foundation, the very foundation of this building, was replaced with a new, modern, seismically safe foundation. So step by step, little by little, the old foundation was removed and a new foundation was installed with base isolators, meaning that City Hall can move around now in the event of an earthquake. So this building is now the tallest building in the world with a base isolation foundation. And it should be completely safe in an earthquake, at least up to 8.2 on the Richter scale. Generations of TV viewers recognize LA City Hall as the iconic symbol of Los Angeles from seeing it in TV shows like Dragnet, Perry Mason, Adam 12, shows like that. We have filming here in City Hall almost every week. This is available to producers for free so that they can come here, and we continue to encourage more filming jobs staying here in Los Angeles. And so City Hall has stood in not only as Los Angeles City Hall, but as the Capitol building in Washington, the Supreme Court, the White House, just about any governor's mansion or a state capitol that you can imagine has been shot here in Los Angeles City Hall. Well, we're behind City Council chambers right now in the Rick Orlov Memorial Media Center, and this is our press room. This is where we stand when we do press conferences, for example, and the print media as well as television stations will sit up here to have our press conferences. In addition, sometimes when we have guests coming into City Council to be honored, they'll come back here to take photographs. But this is the spot where we will conduct most of our press conferences. And it's named after Rick Orlov, who for 30 years covered city government for the Los Angeles Daily News, and he was the dean of the press corps when he passed away, and so this center is named in his honor. We're here in Los Angeles City Council chambers now, and this is where the council has met since 1928, with the exception of just the 2 or 3 years when City Hall was closed for its restoration. And you'll see that each of the members of the council has a desk here on the floor. There's 7 on each side. The one in the middle is where the council president sits. Unlike smaller cities, Los Angeles has both a legislative branch and an executive branch, so the mayor is not a part of the city council. This is the council's area. The mayor has a separate office. So there's 15 of us who serve on the council. Each represents about 270,000 people in our geographical districts. You can see the flags up above. Those represent, again, the various sovereigns that have presided over Los Angeles, as well as some of the early explorers. As you look around and see these very large columns that we have on either side of the chamber, there are 6 on each side for a total of 12. Each one of those columns has a 4-sided crown, so that's 48 sides. Each one of those sides has a symbol representing one of the states of the United States in 1928. So we have every one of the 48 states that was then part of the United States represented here in Los Angeles City Council chambers, again as a symbol of the importance of Los Angeles to the rest of the country. So this chamber is pretty much the same as it would have been in 1928, except for the added electronics and technical components. One big difference is what we call the horseshoe, the desks of the members. Before the restoration, these desks all faced forward towards the council president. But when this chamber was restored, the decision was made that the desks of the council members face towards our bosses, not the council president, but the public. And the public sits here in these pews out in the chamber. All of our meetings are open to the public. Members of the public can come to this podium and speak to the council about issues that are on our agenda or whatever else they have in mind that they want to tell the council about. So because of the very public nature of the City Council's work, it was important that we represented that by turning the desks so that we would be facing the public and being able to be responsive to the public in that way. This chamber is named after John Ferraro, who was the legendary president of the City Council, who served longer than anyone else on this council, over 40 years. And so this chamber is named in his honor, and he has a bust in the back that watches over us as we do our work. These beautiful elevators are exact replicas of the original elevators that were in City Hall in 1928. At some point in the 1960s or thereabouts, all of these elevators were taken out and scrapped. And thankfully, Project Restore was able to find the last remaining pieces of these elevators in a scrapyard and was able to make an exact replica of each of these. This light fixture was the only thing that they couldn't find. And eventually, they found a former employee of the Board of Public Works who had one of those from when the elevators were removed, and he was using it as a porch light at his house. And so they were able to make a replica from that as well. We're now on the 26th floor of City Hall, the top two floors, the 26th and 27th. Here on the 26th, we have a gallery of portraits of every mayor of Los Angeles during the American era. And each portrait is accompanied by a brief description of accomplishments during that mayor's administration. So you really get a sense of the history, the growth, the changes that have happened over the course of Los Angeles' history since the 1850s. This room is named after Mayor Tom Bradley, our longest serving mayor, who served as mayor from 1973 to 1993, who served the people of Los Angeles for over 50 years throughout his time of public service as a police officer, all the way up to being, in my view, the greatest mayor that this city has seen. This is the Tom Bradley room at the top of Los Angeles City Hall. And this is a ceremonial room. It's a beautiful, grand room that we use to welcome heads of state and other important dignitaries who visit Los Angeles. And it's also the location for receptions and other things of organizations that come to visit us in City Hall. It's a beautiful room. All of this is open to the public during normal hours. And so it also offers magnificent views of the entire city of Los Angeles out of all four sides of this room. There's a balcony that runs all the way around, and if you're not too afraid of heights, let's step out and have a look. So here we are on the north side of City Hall, and what's great from this angle is that you can actually see the birthplace of the city of Los Angeles, where the Pueblo was originally created, right there at the Placita. And many of the other historic buildings of early Los Angeles are also right in that area, including the Avila Adobe, the oldest house in Los Angeles, and many other buildings that mark the beginning of the city. From here, we can also see Union Station, which was the last great train station built in America. And Union Station actually had the same architect as City Hall. John Parkinson designed that building and this building. And it is one of the great architectural gems of Los Angeles, both in the exterior and the interior. And still to this day, it's the transportation hub of the entire city of Los Angeles. From this angle, we can also see Chinatown. Of course, Chinatown has been where it is since the 1930s and still has some of the flavor of that era. And off in the distance, of course, you can see the great Dodger Stadium, home of our Los Angeles Dodgers and one of the great baseball stadiums anywhere in the country. Now, from here facing east, we also see historic Little Tokyo, which has been the center of the old Japanese community and culture that has been here in Los Angeles, finding its center there since at least the 1920s. The Los Angeles River makes its way around downtown, and you can see the many bridges that cross it. And from here you can also see now the 6th Street Viaduct, which is one of the most important recent investments in the infrastructure of Los Angeles. As I told you earlier, in 1928, no building in Los Angeles was allowed to exceed 150 feet in height. So City Hall, when it was built, towered over every other building by a considerable amount. But as you can see, That's no longer the case. As seismic technology has improved, as engineering has improved, the skyscrapers that you see now have far exceeded the height of City Hall. From here we can see the Los Angeles Times building that was built at around the same time period as City Hall was built. Across the street, we see the headquarters of the Los Angeles Police Department. Beautiful building, and it also features the memorial for fallen police officers. At the very top of City Hall is a massive light called the Lindbergh Beacon. In 1928, the most famous person in the world was Charles Lindbergh, who had made the first solo flight across the Atlantic Ocean. The leaders of Los Angeles invited Lindbergh to come for the grand opening of City Hall. And Lindbergh responded, "Thanks, but I don't think I'll be joining you. But if you want to honor me in some way, do something for pilots." So the decision was made that a large beacon would be installed on the top of City Hall, shining upwards, so that City Hall would be kind of like a lighthouse for pilots in the burgeoning aviation industry of Southern California. But they soon realized that that was a mistake, because pilots flew in the direction of the beacon and then realized that there is no airstrip or any other facilities nearby City Hall that they should be drawn to. So since then, the beacon hasn't been used. So here we are on the west side of the building, and if you ever want to see a magnificent Los Angeles sunset, you can't pick a better place than the balcony of the Bradley Room here in City Hall. Of course, you can see up on the mountains, Griffith Park, the Hollywood sign, the Griffith Observatory, and all points in between. We also get a great view of much of the Civic Center. We can see the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, the Mark Taper Forum, the Amundsen Theater, the Disney Concert Hall, and the Broad Museum. And down the middle is Grand Park, which was a way to connect all of these civic resources in a way that has created now kind of a modern plaza for the city of Los Angeles. So I hope you've enjoyed this brief tour of your City Hall. This is a building that's open to the public. Much of what we've seen on this tour, you can come and visit during normal business hours. And really, the story of this building tells much of the story of our city. Some good, some bad, but it also shows the continuity of the people of Los Angeles from 1928, when we were booming as a brand new metropolis, to today, when we continue to, in many respects, be one of the great cities of the world. So I hope you've enjoyed this visit, and I look forward to seeing you at your City Hall.